I'm Carol, 30, female. I live in a small apartment downtown, a cozy space that's my sanctuary after long days at the hospital where I work as a medical records technician. My life has always been orderly and quiet, built on the principle of keeping my head down and doing my job well. But a simple act of kindness toward a silent little girl was about to bring my carefully managed world crashing down, all because of my tyrannical boss. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The Health Information Management Department is tucked away in the basement of Northwood General Hospital, a windowless world of beige filing cabinets and the constant hum of computer servers. We're the unseen gears of the hospital machine, managing the endless flow of patient data. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and I've always taken pride in my meticulous work. My days were a predictable rhythm of scanning, indexing, and coding. I liked the predictability. It was safe. That sense of safety, however, was an illusion, one that was about to be shattered by a pair of wide, silent eyes. It was a Tuesday afternoon, unusually hectic. I was heading to the pediatric ward on the third floor to retrieve a batch of discharge files. As I rounded the corner near the surgical waiting area, I saw her, a little girl no older than 6, sitting alone on a bench. She had dark, curly hair tied back with a blue ribbon and was clutching a well-loved stuffed bear. What struck me was her stillness. The waiting room was a sea of anxious energy, parents pacing, phones ringing, quiet chatter, but she was an island of perfect, unnerving calm. She wasn't crying or fidgeting. She was just watching. I delivered my files, and on my way back, she was still there in the exact same spot. An hour passed. I had to go up again for another collection, and my path took me past her once more. This time, her posture seemed to have wilted. Her small shoulders were slumped, and her gaze was fixed on the floor. I hesitated. Hospital policy was clear. Don't get involved. We were records technicians, not social workers, but something in my gut wouldn't let me walk away. Approaching slowly, I knelt to her level. "Hi there," I said softly. "Are you waiting for someone?" She looked up at me, her brown eyes impossibly large, but didn't speak. She simply gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. I noticed her little stomach rumble, a sound that seemed loud in the charged silence between us. "Are you hungry?" I asked. Another slow nod. I glanced at the clock. It was almost 4 p.m. Who knew how long she had been sitting here? "My break was in 10 minutes. I'll be right back," I promised. "Stay right here." In the cafeteria, I grabbed a carton of milk, a small cup of apple slices, and a cheese stick. Imple kid-friendly food. When I returned, she hadn't moved an inch. I sat on the bench beside her and placed the items on her lap. "Here you go," I said with a smile. She looked at the food, then up at me, a question in her eyes. I gave her an encouraging nod. Slowly, she picked up an apple slice and took a small bite. We sat in silence as she ate, the only sounds being the quiet munching and the distant hospital announcements. I didn't push her to talk. I just sat with her, a brief moment of human connection in a sterile, stressful environment. I felt I'd done something good, something right. I had no idea that this small act of compassion had been witnessed by the one person in the hospital who viewed kindness as a weakness. My 10-minute break stretched into 15 as I waited for the little girl to finish her snack. Just as she was taking her last sip of milk, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Carol, what do you think you're doing?" I looked up to see my boss, Brenda Harrison, standing a few feet away. Brenda was the director of Health Information Management, a woman who seemed to be perpetually powered by cold, brew coffee, and disdain. At 52, she ran our department with an iron fist, valuing protocol over people and efficiency over empathy. Her lips were pursed into a thin, disapproving line, and her eyes, magnified by her glasses, were fixed on me with laser-like intensity. I stood up immediately, my heart sinking. "Brenda, I was just on my break." I tried to keep my voice even. "This little girl looked hungry, so you were fraternizing with a patient's family member," she interrupted, her voice low and sharp. "On hospital time. Your break ended 5 minutes ago." She didn't even glance at the child, who had frozen, her hand still holding the milk carton. Brenda's focus was entirely on me, her expression one of utter disgust. She viewed any deviation from the workflow as a personal insult. I was just about to head back down, I said, my cheeks flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "It was just a few minutes. A few minutes of you not doing your job." She snapped. Our department has a backlog of ER charts that needs to be processed by 5 o'clock. Instead of doing that, you're up here playing nanny. What if there was a liability issue? Did you ask about allergies? Did you get parental permission? Her questions were like daggers, each one designed to make me feel small and reckless. I hadn't asked. I'd just seen a hungry child and acted. I'm sorry. I mumbled, feeling defeated. I'll go back downstairs right now. Oh, you will, she said, taking a step closer. She lowered her voice so only I could hear. Let me be perfectly clear, Carol. Your job is to manage records, not people. You are not a nurse. You are not a doctor. You are a clerk. If I ever see you wasting time like this again, if you so much as look at a patient's family sideways, you'll be cleaning out your desk. I will fire you without a second thought. Do you understand me? The threat hung in the air, cold and heavy. Fire me for giving a child some apple slices. The injustice of it was staggering. I felt a surge of defiance, but one look at her smug, unyielding face told me it was pointless to argue. She held all the power, and she knew it. Yes, Brenda, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I understand. Good. She gave a curt nod, then turned and walked away without another word, her heels clicking authoritatively on the linoleum floor. I stood there for a moment, my hands trembling. The little girl was watching me, her eyes wide with what looked like fear. I gave her a weak, reassuring smile, took the empty food containers from her, and threw them in a nearby bin. As I walked back to the elevators, heading for the basement, I felt Brenda's warning echoing in my ears. I felt humiliated, angry, and most of all, helpless. I had tried to do a good thing, and in return, my entire livelihood had been threatened. The rest of the day, I worked with a knot of anxiety in my stomach, coding files with robotic efficiency, my mind replaying the coldness in my boss's eyes. The next 2 days were miserable. I kept my head down, avoided any unnecessary trips out of the basement, and spoke only when spoken to. Brenda watched me like a hawk, her presence a constant, oppressive weight. The joy I once found in the quiet order of my work was gone, replaced by a dull dread. I couldn't shake the image of the little girl's face, or the feeling of Brenda's threat hanging over my head. I vented to my friend Sarah, a unit clerk on the pediatric floor, during a quick lunch. She was as outraged as I was. That woman is a monster, Sarah said, shaking her head. Firing you for that. She has no soul. On Friday, I was tasked with sorting through a new batch of inpatient admission forms. It was tedious work, but it was a distraction. As I was inputting data from a file from the cardiothoracic unit, my eyes caught on a familiar detail. The file was for a patient admitted for a complex heart procedure. Listed under emergency contacts was his daughter. Her name was Mia. The age listed next to it was 6. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be the same girl? It had to be. My curiosity piqued. I kept working, but my mind was elsewhere. I finished the file and moved on to the next. Later that afternoon, Sarah called my extension. Hey, you're not going to believe this, she said, her voice hushed. You know that little girl you told me about, the one from the waiting room? She's here on the pediatric floor right now. She's visiting a patient. Is her name Mia? I asked, my voice tight. Yeah, how did you know? Sarah sounded surprised. She's the sweetest little thing, but she doesn't talk, not a single word. The nurses said she has selective mutism, brought on by the stress of her mom passing away last year, and now her grandpa being in for major surgery. My heart ached for the little girl. A silent child dealing with so much loss, no wonder she had looked so lost and alone. Is her father with her? I asked, thinking back to the waiting room. I hadn't seen anyone who looked like they were with her. No, he's the one performing the surgery, Sarah explained. He's in the OR. It's some massive 12-hour operation. He brought her in this morning, and a nurse was supposed to be watching her in the waiting area. But there was a code blue, and I guess she got left on her own for a bit. That must have been when you saw her. It all clicked into place. She was alone because her father was literally holding someone's life in his hands. The thought made Brenda's reaction even more monstrous. I felt a renewed wave of anger. While her father was saving a life, I was being threatened for giving his daughter a snack. The world felt deeply unfair in that moment. Just before the end of my shift, I had to run one last file up to the surgical floor. As I passed the waiting room again, I saw her. Mia was sitting with a nurse this time, drawing in a coloring book. As I walked by, she looked up and our eyes met. She gave me a small, hesitant wave. I waved back, a genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in days. As she waved, I noticed something on her wrist. It was a delicate silver chain, a medical alert bracelet. From the distance, I could just make out the engraved name. It wasn't her name. It was the name to contact in an emergency. The engraving was clear, even from 10 feet away. Doctor. Robert Morgan. I froze. I knew that name. Everyone at Northwood General knew that name. My mind began to spin, connecting dots I hadn't even realized were there. Dr. Robert Morgan. The name echoed in my head all weekend. He wasn't just any doctor. He was a legend, doctor. Morgan was the chief of cardiothoracic surgery, a world-renowned surgeon who had pioneered several life-saving techniques. He was the golden boy of Northwood General, the kind of doctor they featured on billboards and in fundraising campaigns. More than that, he was also a major benefactor. The entire new surgical wing, the one Brenda was so proud of, had been named the Morgan Pavilion after a multi-million-dollar donation from his family. He wasn't just an employee of the hospital. He was a pillar holding it up, and Mia was his daughter. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The silent, lonely little girl I had helped was the daughter of one of the most powerful and respected men in the entire hospital network. Brenda had threatened to fire me for feeding Dr. Morgan's child. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Did Brenda have any idea? I highly doubted it. To Brenda, Mia was just some anonymous rule. Breaking inconvenience, a distraction from the sacred workflow. She had seen a lowly records clerk and a child, not the daughter of the man whose name was literally carved into the stone entrance of our newest building. On Monday morning, the hospital was buzzing. Dr. Morgan's 12-hour surgery on Friday had been a resounding success, a groundbreaking procedure that was already making news. As I walked through the main lobby, I saw it. On a large digital display honoring key staff and donors, there was a professional photograph of Dr. Morgan. He was handsome, with kind eyes and a confident smile, wearing his surgical scrubs, and standing next to him, holding his hand and smiling shyly at the camera, was Mia. She was wearing the same blue ribbon in her hair. There was no doubt seeing them together in the photo solidified everything. My anger, which had been simmering for days, now burned with a new kind of clarity. Brenda's cruelty hadn't just been an overreaction. It had been a colossal, ignorant miscalculation. She had bullied and threatened me for showing a basic human decency to the daughter of a man she would grovel to in the hallway. Her hypocrisy was astounding. She, who fawned over donors and senior physicians, had treated his child with callous indifference. I spent the rest of the morning in a haze, my mind racing. What should I do? Part of me wanted to just let it go. I still had my job, and a confrontation with Brenda seemed terrifying. She could still make my life a living hell, regardless of who Mia's father was. She could bury me in grunt work, deny my vacation requests, and write me up for the smallest infractions until she found a legitimate reason to let me go. The thought of facing her was paralyzing, but then I would picture Mia's sad, silent face. And I'd hear Brenda's cold voice calling me a clerk and threatening me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the principal. It was about standing up to a bully who wielded her tiny bit of power with such cruelty. The fear was real, but the desire for justice was starting to become stronger. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. The man in the photograph gave me an anchor. He was the truth, and I decided with a deep, calming breath that Brenda Harrison was about to come face to face with it. For the next 24 hours, I wrestled with what to do. My first instinct was to go to human resources. But I quickly dismissed that idea. HR at Northwood was notoriously pro-management. It would be my word, the word of a basement-level technician, against a department director. Brenda would paint me as a disgruntled employee who broke protocol and was now making up stories. She would twist my 15-minute break into a dereliction of duty. I had no witnesses except for a 6-year-old girl who didn't speak. It was a losing battle. My friend Sarah suggested I try to accidentally run into Dr. Morgan in the hallway and tell him, but the thought of ambushing a man of his stature, a man who was likely still consumed with his patient's recovery, felt wrong and opportunistic. I wasn't looking for a reward or special treatment. I was looking for accountability. I wanted Brenda to understand the gravity of her actions, not from me, but from someone she couldn't dismiss. That's when the idea came to me. It was simple, direct, and it left no room for misinterpretation. I would write an email, not to HR and not to Brenda. I would write it directly to Dr. Morgan. I spent my entire lunch break on Tuesday composing it. I wrote and deleted and rewrote the message a dozen times. I wanted it to be perfect, professional, factual, and devoid of emotional drama. This wasn't about complaining, it was about reporting an incident. I started by introducing myself. Dear Dr. Morgan, my name is Carol, and I am a medical records technician here at Northwood General. I am writing to you today to humbly apologize for any distress I may have inadvertently caused your daughter, Mia, last Tuesday afternoon. This opening felt right. It centered the message on Mia, not on me. It was an apology, which immediately removed any sense of accusation and would hopefully make him more receptive to reading on. I then laid out the facts of what happened as neutrally as possible. I described finding me alone in the waiting area, noticing she seemed hungry, and buying her a small snack from the cafeteria. I detailed the exact items: milk, apple slices, a cheese stick, to show it was a harmless act of care, not some random handout. The next part was the most difficult to write. I had to describe Brenda's intervention without sounding like I was just tattling on my boss. Shortly after, my department director, MS Brenda Harrison, approached me. She expressed significant concern that my actions were a breach of hospital protocol. She informed me that interacting with patients' families was outside the scope of my duties and constituted a serious infraction. She was very clear that if an incident like this were to happen again, it would be grounds for my immediate termination. I didn't use words like bullied, threatened, or cruel. I just stated what she said and did. The facts were damning enough on their own. I concluded the email by reiterating my apology. My intention was never to overstep my role, but simply to offer a moment of comfort to a child who appeared to be in need. However, I now understand from MS Harrison that this was inappropriate. Please accept my sincerest apologies. I hope Mia is doing well. Sincerely, Carol. Before clicking send, I read it one last time. It was perfect. It was a confession and an apology on the surface, but underneath, it was a detailed report of Brenda's misconduct. It forced Dr. Morgan to see the situation not through my eyes, but through the lens of what happened to his daughter and how the hospital staff responded. I had laid a trap made of politeness and professionalism. With a deep breath and a trembling finger, I clicked send. The email was gone. Now all I could do was wait. The silence that followed was deafening. All Tuesday afternoon, every ping from my computer made my heart leap into my throat, but there was no reply. Wednesday morning came and went with the same agonizing quiet. I started to second-guess myself. Maybe he was too busy to read emails from random hospital staff. Maybe he read it and thought I was a troublemaker. Maybe he'd forwarded it straight to Brenda, and my termination was already being processed. The anxiety was eating me alive. I could feel Brenda's eyes on me every time I left my desk, her usual scowl seeming to carry a new, victorious weight. Around 2 p.m. on Wednesday, Brenda's phone rang. I could only hear her side of the conversation, a series of clipped formal responses. Yes, of course. No, I was not aware. I see. 3 o'clock would be fine. Yes, I will have her join me. Her face was pale. She hung up the phone and looked directly at me. Her expression was unreadable. Carol, she said, her voice strained, we have a meeting in the main administration boardroom now. My blood ran cold. This was it. She was taking me to be fired in front of some higher-up. I felt my legs tremble as I stood up and followed her out of the department. We walked in complete silence, the sound of our shoes echoing in the long, sterile corridors. The main administration boardroom was on the top floor, a place I had never been. It had a long, polished mahogany table, leather chairs, and a panoramic view of the city. It was a room designed for power. When we entered, one person was already there, standing by the window with his back to us. He turned as the door closed. It was Dr. Robert Morgan. He was dressed in a sharp suit, not his usual scrubs, and his face was stern. He wasn't smiling like he was in the photograph. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and focused. He nodded at me, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. Then he looked at Brenda. MS Harrison, he said, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable authority. Thank you for coming. Brenda pasted on a sickeningly sweet smile. Dr. Morgan, it's an honor. I was so pleased to hear about your success with the valve replacement surgery. Truly remarkable. She was practically fawning over him. Dr. Morgan did not return the smile. I didn't ask for this meeting to discuss my surgeries, he said, his voice cutting through her flattery. I asked for it because I received a very troubling email yesterday from your employee, Carol. He gestured toward me. Brenda's smile vanished. Her face went from pale to ghostly white. She shot a look at me that was pure venom. The email, Doctor. Morgan continued, walking slowly toward the table, was an apology for giving my 6-year-old daughter a cup of milk and some apple slices while she was waiting alone for me, while I was in a 12-hour surgery saving a man's life. Carol was concerned that this action was a severe breach of protocol, a breach she was told that would warrant her immediate termination if it ever happened again. Is that correct, Ms. Harrison? Brenda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked like a fish gasping for air. Well, there are hospital policies, she stammered. Policies? Doctor, Morgan's voice dropped, becoming dangerously quiet. Is it the policy of Northwood General to let a child sit alone and hungry for hours? Is it the policy to threaten compassionate employees for showing a basic level of human decency? My daughter has not spoken a word since her mother died. She is terrified of hospitals, and this woman, he said, looking at me with an expression that was no longer unreadable. It was gratitude, showed her kindness. She did what any decent human being would have done, and you threatened her job for it. He was no longer looking at Brenda. He was looking directly at me. Carol, I did not reply to your email because an email felt insufficient. I wanted to thank you in person. Thank you for looking after my daughter. Thank you for being kind. You did nothing wrong. He then turned his steely gaze back to Brenda. Her entire facade of authority had crumbled. She was just a woman, speechless and terrified, standing in front of a man who could end her career with a single phone call. As for you, Ms. Harrison, doctor, Morgan said slowly, I believe we need to have a serious discussion with the hospital president about your management philosophy. I was dismissed from the boardroom shortly after that, doctor. Morgan gave me a small, appreciative nod as I left, and I walked out on shaking legs, leaving Brenda to face the music alone. I didn't go straight back to the basement. Instead, I went to the small, empty chapel on the first floor and just sat, my heart pounding in my chest. I had done it, I had stood up to her, and I had won. It wasn't a loud, dramatic victory, but a quiet, definitive one. Brenda didn't return to the department that afternoon. She didn't come in the next day either. The official story, which trickled down through the hospital grapevine, was that Brenda Harrison had resigned, effective immediately, to pursue other opportunities. We all knew what that meant. She hadn't resigned. She had been given a choice, quit or be fired. She chose the path that allowed her to keep a sliver of her dignity. The oppressive atmosphere that had choked our department for years lifted almost overnight. People started smiling more. The constant tension that hummed under the surface was gone. It was like we could all finally breathe again. A week later, an interoffice envelope appeared on my desk. Inside was a card. On the front was a child's drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands, one with brown curly hair and one with straight hair like mine. When I opened it, there were 2 messages. The first, in shaky 6-year-old printing, were 3 simple words, "Thank you, Carol." Below it, in a neat, masculine script, was a note from her father, Carol. It read, "Thank you again for your kindness. It meant more to Mia and to me than you will ever know. The hospital is promoting an internal candidate to fill the director position. I have taken the liberty of putting your name forward for consideration with the highest possible recommendation. Your file shows a history of exemplary work, and your character is precisely what this hospital needs more of. Please consider it." I stared at the note in disbelief. Director, me, it was a leap I had never even dreamed of. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. I wasn't a tyrant like Brenda. I didn't thrive on power, but maybe I realized that was the point. Maybe the department didn't need another ruler. Maybe it needed someone who remembered that behind every file, every code, and every protocol, there was a human being. My life is different now. I took the promotion. The transition was challenging, but my colleagues who had worked under Brenda's thumb alongside me were incredibly supportive. We've rebuilt the department's culture from the ground up, focusing on collaboration and mutual respect instead of fear. I still see Mia sometimes. Her grandfather recovered fully, and she comes with Dr. Morgan to hospital charity events. She still doesn't speak much, but she always saves a smile and a wave for me. That small gesture is worth more than any promotion. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest act of kindness, giving a hungry child a snack, sending a carefully worded email, can create the biggest changes, bringing a quiet and deeply satisfying justice in the silence after the storm.